You know, they say that intuition is a woman's superpower, but I think sometimes we willfully ignore it because the truth is just too painful to look at directly. I had been ignoring that little voice in my head for months, maybe even years. But that Tuesday evening, the night the storm hit both outside my window and inside my life, I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was pouring rain, the kind that lashes against the windows like it's trying to break in. I was standing in the kitchen of the Victorian home my grandmother Eleanor had left me, carefully plating a beef Wellington. It was supposed to be a celebration. 4 years of marriage, 4 years of Dean, promising we'd start trying for a baby. When the timing was right, the house smelled incredible. Rich pastry, savory beef, and the truffle oil Dean claimed to love so much. I had set the table with Eleanor's silver, lit the tapered candles, and even bought a bottle of the Cabernet he liked, the one that cost way more than a senior hospital administrator should splurge on a weeknight. I was checking the time on the oven when my phone buzzed. It was Dean. I wiped my hands on my apron and swiped answer, putting on my best smile. "Hey honey, you're cutting it close. The Wellington is perfect," and I opened the wine to let it breathe. "Camilla, hey!" His voice was choppy, cutting in and out over the sound of wind and what sounded like airport announcements. "Listen, babe, I'm so sorry. Something huge came up with the downtown commercial project. The investors are freaking out. I have to fly to Denver tonight, right now." My smile faltered. "Denver? Tonight?" "Dean, it's our anniversary dinner. I've been cooking since I got home from the hospital." I know, he said, sounding impatient. Not sorry. "Don't start, Cam. I'm doing this for us, for our future. You know how much commission I'll make on this deal? It'll pay for the fertility treatments." He shifted the phone, and for a split second, the camera angle went wide. He was clearly at the airport. But behind him, just over his left shoulder, I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was a neon pink suitcase. Not just any suitcase. It was a limited edition designer bag with gold hardware. I knew it because I had bought it. I had bought it for my sister-in-law Melody for her birthday last month. "Dean," I asked, my voice trembling slightly, is someone with you?" "What? No, just the team. Look, they're calling boarding. I have to go. Love you. Mean it." He didn't wait for me to say it back. He lowered the phone to end the call, but his thumb must have missed the red button. The screen didn't go black immediately. It just pointed down at the floor, capturing his shoes walking briskly, and then I heard it. "Is she gone?" The voice was unmistakable, high-pitched, mocking, and sickeningly familiar. It was my mother-in-law, Joyce. "Yeah." Dean's voice came through clear as a bell, now that he wasn't pretending to be stressed. "God, she's so needy. It's exhausting." "Well, you handled it perfectly, sweetie," Joyce said. "Now put that phone away. Melody is waiting by the gate with the drinks. Hawaii, here we come." "Finally," Dean laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "A week without the wet blanket. Let's go, Mom." Then the screen finally went black. I stood there in the middle of my beautiful kitchen, the silence of the house deafening compared to the storm raging outside. My hand was gripping the counter so hard my knuckles were white. Denver business trip. They were going to Hawaii. My husband, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law Gerald, and Melody. The whole family was going on vacation, and not only was I not invited, but they had lied to my face to leave me behind. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The smell of the beef Wellingtons suddenly made me nauseous. I turned off the oven with a shaking hand. Why? Why lie? If they wanted a family trip, why not just tell me? Was I that unwanted? Was I just a wet blanket, as Dean had said? I walked into the living room, my legs feeling heavy, like I was wading through concrete. I sat down on the sofa, staring blankly at the fireplace, and that's when I saw it. Dean's old iPad. He usually kept it in his briefcase, but he must have left it on the charging dock in his rush to leave. As I stared at it, the screen lit up with a notification. It was a message from Melody. I leaned forward, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The preview of the message was visible on the lock screen. "I can't wait for us to announce the good news next week." She is going to freak out when she realizes the house is basically ours. Hurry up, baby daddy. Baby daddy, the house is ours. The room spun. I reached out, my fingers trembling uncontrollably, and picked up the iPad. I knew Dean's passcode. He never changed it. It was 0327, Melody's birthday. I had always thought it was just because she introduced us, a nod to family. Now that number felt like a knife in my gut. I entered the code, the padlock icon unlocked, and just like that, I opened the door to hell. The moment the home screen loaded, I felt a physical wave of nausea hit me. The background photo wasn't me. It wasn't us. It was a selfie of Dean and Melody, cheek to cheek, lying in a bed that looked suspiciously like the one in the guest room of my parents' house. I went straight to the messages. I didn't want to believe it. Part of me, the pathetic part that had spent 32 years trying to please these people, wanted to believe this was a prank, a misunderstanding. But the text thread labeled "The Winning Team" shattered that hope instantly. The group chat included Dean, my sister-in-law Melody, my mother-in-law Joyce, and my father-in-law Gerald. Everyone was there except me. To understand why I was so vulnerable to this deception, you have to understand the ecosystem I had married into. In the foster household, there were two distinct roles, and they were assigned. From the moment I said, "I do." Melody was the golden child, and I was the shadow. Melody was born 5 years after Dean, and from the moment I met the family, she could do no wrong. She was bubbly, demanding, and pretty in a conventional way that Joyce adored. If Melody broke something, it was an accident. Or worse, it was somehow my fault for placing it there. If Melody got fired from a job, the boss was incompetent. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one. The one with the stable career, the inheritance, the reliability. I was quiet, studious, and successful. I had my own home, my own income, my own life. But somehow, that made me the perfect target. I scrolled up in the group chat, my eyes burning as I read the messages from just a few hours ago. Joyce, did you get the keys to her safe? We need to make sure we have the original deed before you file the joint ownership papers. Dean, got them copied yesterday while she was at the hospital. She has no clue. She thinks I was fixing the hinge on the closet door. Melody, God, she is so stupid. A hospital administrator with 0 street smarts. I can't believe I have to pretend to be nice to her for another 6 months. Gerald, just stick to the plan. Mel, once they refinance and he's on the deed as full owner, we leverage the property. That house is worth $1.5 million. That's your startup capital right there. Dean, don't worry, Gerald. I've got her wrapped around my finger. She'll sign the ownership transfer papers as soon as I get back from Denver. I guilt-tripped her so hard at dinner last night about the fertility clinic costs. I dropped the iPad onto the couch cushion as if it were burning hot. I rushed to the bathroom and dry heaved over the sink. My body was rejecting the information faster than my brain could process it. They weren't just excluding me, they were hunting me. I washed my face with freezing cold water, staring at my reflection. Pale skin, wide, terrified eyes. Pull yourself together, Camilla, I whispered. You need to know everything. I went back to the iPad. I needed to see how deep the rot went. I opened the hidden photo album. It was password protected, but of course, the password was the same, 0327. Hundreds of photos. Dean and Melody at a resort in Cabo when he said he was at a real estate conference. Dean and Melody at a concert I had bought tickets for, but he claimed he was sick, so I gave them to Melody to take a friend. Dean and Melody at restaurants, on beaches, in hotel rooms. The timeline went back over 2 years. 2 years of lies, 2 years of secret getaways, funded by my salary while I stayed home working double shifts to cover his business expenses. And then the most recent ones, a sonogram, dated 2 weeks ago. The name on the patient file was Melody Foster. Hurry up, baby daddy. The text message suddenly made horrific sense. Melody was pregnant, my husband was the father, and my entire extended family knew about it. They were celebrating it. They were planning to go to Hawaii to celebrate their new grandchild, funded by money stolen from our joint accounts. I checked the banking app on the iPad. Our savings account, which I had contributed 80% of from my salary and Eleanor's inheritance, was drained. Transaction, Aloha Resorts, $12,000. Transaction, First Class Delta, $4,500. Transaction, Tiffany & Co's, Third House, $200. The jewelry store purchase made my stomach lurch. He had bought Melody jewelry with our money, with my money, probably an engagement ring. I felt a scream building in my throat, but it wouldn't come out. It was stuck behind a wall of pure, unadulterated shock. I went back to the messages. I searched for the word house. Melody. I don't want to live in that dusty old museum of hers. It smells like old lady. Dean. Babe, we aren't living there. Once she signs the ownership transfer, I own half. We force a sale or take out a massive home equity line of credit. We take the cash, buy that modern condo downtown you like, and leave her with the debt. Joyce. Or just renovate the basement. Camilla is used to being in the background. She can live down there and pay the mortgage while you two take the master suite. She'll do it if you say it's for the family. She's desperate for approval. That comment from my mother-in-law broke something inside me. She can live down there, like a servant, like a dog. They had scripted my entire demise. They had turned my life into a long con. The marriage wasn't a celebration of love. It was a hostile takeover of my assets. I looked around the living room. The shadows from the storm were dancing on the walls. This house, grandmother Eleanor's house. Eleanor had been the only person who ever really saw me. When she passed away 3 years ago, the reading of the will had been the first time I saw my in-laws truly angry at me. Eleanor had left everything to me. To Camilla, the will read, because she is the only one who understands that a home is built with love, not leverage. My in-laws had tried to contest it. They failed. Then suddenly they became nice. They encouraged my relationship with Dean more aggressively. He's a catch, Cam, Gerald had said. Don't mess this up. Family is everything. I realized now, sitting in the dark, that I hadn't messed anything up. I was just the mark in their con game. The rain lashed harder against the glass. I picked up the iPad again. I needed to save everything. Every text, every photo, every bank transfer. My hands were shaking, but my mind was starting to clear. The fog of love and duty was lifting, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They wanted the house. They wanted my inheritance. They wanted a war. And they had just made the mistake of leaving their playbook behind. I went deeper into Dean's search history on the browser. What I found there made my blood freeze. California Community Property Laws Divorce. How to force sale of jointly owned property. Quickest way to evict? Co-owner. Paternity test cost. How to induce labor naturally. He wasn't planning on waiting for me to die of natural causes. He was planning to get his name on the deed, wait a few months for the baby to be born, then file for divorce. In California, once he's on the deed as a joint owner, he owns half the equity. The house is worth $1.5 million free and clear. He would walk away with $750,000, or they would force a sale, kick me out, and split the cash. With Melody pregnant, they needed that money now. The most chilling search was from last week. How long does fraud investigation take? He knew he was committing crimes. He just thought he wouldn't get caught. I scrolled further back. There it was, a loan application I had never seen before. A hard money loan for $200,000. The collateral listed, 42 Oak Street, my house. The borrower's signature, Camilla Foster. Except I had never signed it. It was a good forgery, but the loop on the C was too wide. I always made that loop smaller. Dean had forged my signature to get a $250,000 loan using my house as collateral. This wasn't just adultery and emotional abuse. This was federal fraud. I needed a witness. I needed an ally. And I knew exactly who to call. Bridget had been my best friend since nursing school before I moved into hospital administration. She was the complete opposite of me. Loud, brash, tattooed, and unafraid of confrontation. She had never liked Dean. From day one, she called him Ken doll with a black soul. I had drifted away from her in the last 2 years because Dean didn't like her. She's too rough, Cam. She's a bad influence. You're a professional now. You need professional friends. And because I was tired of defending him, I had let one of my most important relationships wither. I picked up my phone. It was 11 p.m. She answered on the second ring. Cam, is everything okay? Why are you calling? You were right, I said. My voice sounded strange, robotic. You were right about everything. What did he do? Bridget's voice shifted instantly from sleepy to alert. Did he hit you? No, worse. He's screwing my sister-in-law, and my in-laws are in on it, and they're trying to steal my house. There's a baby. He forged my signature on a loan. Bridget, they've been planning this for years. Silence on the line, then the sound of rustling sheets and keys jingling. I'm on my way. Don't do anything. Don't confront them. Just lock the doors. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When Bridget arrived, she didn't hug me. She walked into the kitchen, took one look at the cold beef Wellingtons still sitting on the island, grabbed the bottle of wine I had opened, and poured 2 massive glasses. Drink, she ordered, sliding a glass across the granite. Then talk. I showed her the iPad. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Bridget didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She cursed, creative, violent curses that made me feel slightly better. Okay, Bridget said, slamming the iPad cover shut around 1:00 a.m. This is war, and in war, you don't cry, you shoot. She looked at me, her eyes blazing. Cam, look at me. Stop shaking. They think you are a doormat. They are banking on it, literally banking on it. I know, I whispered. How could they? My own family. Because they are narcissists and parasites, Bridget said bluntly. But we don't have time for psychoanalysis. We have a timeline. How long are they in Hawaii? 7 days. They come back next Tuesday. 7 days, Bridget nodded. Okay, we can do a lot in 7 days. She pulled out a notepad from her purse, the same tactical planning approach that made her one of the best ICU nurses in the city. First evidence, we need to back up this entire iPad, cloud, hard drive, printed copies, everything. Done, I said. I can do that tonight. Second, Bridget pointed a pen at me. The house? As long as you own this house, they will come for it. Even if you divorce Dean, he's got copies of keys. He knows the codes. And your in-laws, they will guilt you, harass you, maybe even sue you claiming some family right. It's toxic, Cam. The house is the poison. I looked around the kitchen. I loved this house. It was my connection to grandmother Eleanor. But Bridget was right. As long as I had this asset, I was a target. And if I stayed here, every room would remind me of Dean's lies. Every corner would be haunted by the memory of Melody plotting my eviction. I can't live here anymore, I said, the realization hitting my chest. They tainted it. Exactly, Bridget said. So we scorch the earth. We get rid of the bait. Sell it? I asked. But a sale takes months. Staging, listing, escrow. Not if you sell to an investor, Bridget said. My cousin works for one of those we buy houses corporate firms. They buy for cash, close in days. You take a hit on the price, but you get liquid cash and you get out. Cash, I repeated. Yes, cash. And you know who hates cash? People who want to steal half your equity through a property transfer that hasn't happened yet. Bridget leaned in. Sell the house, take the money, move. By the time they get off that plane with their lays and their tans, they won't be coming home to a mansion. They'll be coming home to a locked gate and a stranger. A shiver ran down my spine, not of fear, but of anticipation. I have a job offer in London, I said suddenly. Head of operations at a research hospital. They emailed me 2 months ago. I was going to turn it down because Dean said he couldn't leave his business here. Bridget grinned, a feral, shark-like grin. London, perfect. It's far, it's expensive, and they can't find you. She raised her wine glass. To the new Camilla. I clinked my glass against hers. To the scorched earth. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the sky a bruised purple. I didn't sleep. I called in sick to the hospital for the first time in 5 years. Food poisoning from last night's dinner, which wasn't entirely a lie. By 9:01 a.m., I was sitting in Mrs. Patterson's leather chair. Mrs. Patterson was the best divorce and estate lawyer in the county. She was 60, wore sharp Chanel suits, and terrified grown men for a living. She had handled Eleanor's will and had warned me then to be careful about fortune hunters. I laid it all out: the iPad evidence, the texts, the planned ownership fraud, the forged loan documents. Mrs. Patterson listened in silence, her face unreadable behind her glasses. When I finished, she took a slow sip of her coffee. "Men like Dean," she said, her voice low and gravelly, "are not just greedy, Camilla. They are sloppy." She opened a file on her desk. "I ran a preliminary asset check on Mr. Dean Foster this morning after you called. Do you know why he is so desperate for this house right now?" "Because of the baby?" I asked. "Partly, but mostly because of this." She slid a document across the desk. It was the loan application I had seen on the iPad, but this was the official copy from the lender. He applied for this loan 2 weeks ago. The collateral listed is 42 Oak Street, your house. But look at page 3. I flipped to page 3 and felt the world tilt. There was my forged signature again, but below it was Dean's income statement. He had claimed to make $300,000 a year. I knew for a fact his actual income was $75,000. He had lied about everything. "This loan hasn't funded yet," Mrs. Patterson explained. "It's in final underwriting. The lender is waiting for the joint ownership deed to be recorded before they release the funds. That's why he needed you to sign next week. He's already spent this money in his head, probably to pay off gambling debts and book that Hawaii trip. If I sell the house..." "If you sell the house," Mrs. Patterson smiled, a cold, sharp smile, "the collateral vanishes. The loan is denied, and Mr. Foster is left with very angry loan sharks and no way to pay them. And he goes to jail for forgery and fraud." I walked out of her office into the bright California sunlight, feeling like I could breathe for the first time in years. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Dean. "Hope you're having a good week, babe. Miss you. Work is crazy here in Denver. Love you." I looked at the text. The audacity, the lies. I typed back, "Miss you too. Can't wait for you to come home." I hit send. Let him think he's safe. Let him think the sheep is still sleeping. He has no idea the wolf is at the door. The next 96 hours were a blur of controlled chaos. Bridget's cousin, Perry, worked for a firm called Prime Investment Reality. He met me at the house 2 hours after I left the lawyer's office. Perry was a no-nonsense guy in a polo shirt who looked at houses like a surgeon looks at patients: clinical, efficient, profitable. He walked through my home taking notes on an iPad, measuring rooms with a laser device. "It's a prime lot," Perry said, standing in the kitchen where my life had fallen apart just the night before. "Victorian architecture, original hardwood, established neighborhood. If you want to list it traditionally, you could get $1.6 million, maybe $1.7 million, but it would take 60 to 90 days to close." "I don't have 60 days, I said firmly. "I have 5. Perry nodded. "Okay, cash offer, as is. No inspections, no contingencies, no financing delays. We close on Monday, but the price will be $1.3 million. $1.3 million. That was $300,000 less than market value. A year ago, I would have balked. I would have thought about Eleanor's legacy, about getting every penny. But then I thought about Dean's plan to leverage the house for $800,000 and leave me with the debt while he and Melody lived in a downtown condo with my money. "Deal," I said. "Seriously?" Perry looked surprised. "You don't want to think about it? Call a family member?" "My family is in Hawaii," I said. "Where do I sign?" We signed the preliminary papers right there on the kitchen island where I had plated the beef Wellington that would never be eaten. "Okay," Perry said, packing up his tablet. "Title company will rush the search. We sign closing documents Friday, money wires Monday morning. You need to be out by Monday at 5 p.m. We change the locks then." Monday, the day before they returned from paradise. The countdown had begun. I went into overdrive. I couldn't hire a traditional moving truck because the neighbors might see and text my in-laws. I had to be surgical about this operation. I focused on what mattered: Eleanor's jewelry, my professional certificates, my medical school diplomas, the few photos I treasured. Everything else had to go, but I didn't want to just donate it. I wanted to make Dean's betrayal cost him in every possible way. I went into our bedroom, the room where I had been planning to start trying for a baby next month. I looked at Dean's side of the closet. He loved his clothes. He was a peacock who spent more on suits than most people spend on cars. Row after row of Italian wool, custom dress shirts with his initials on the cuffs, designer shoes in their original boxes. I didn't destroy them. That would be too obvious, too emotional. Instead, I sold them. I created anonymous accounts on every resale app I could find: Poshmark, The RealReal, Vestiaire Collective. Flash sale, men's luxury items, must go this weekend, price to move. I sold his $3,000 Armani suits for $200 each. I sold his collection of silk ties for $10 a piece. I sold his Italian leather shoes for $50 a pair. Within 48 hours, strangers were coming to my back door, cash in hand, carrying away Dean's pride and joy in shopping bags. The money didn't matter. It was maybe $8,000 total. But watching his precious wardrobe disappear piece by piece gave me a dark satisfaction. Every empty hanger was a small victory. By Sunday night, the house was echoing and clean. I had shipped the few things I wanted to keep to a storage unit I rented near Heathrow Airport. I slept in a sleeping bag in the middle of the empty living room, listening to the silence. I pulled up the flight tracking app on my phone. I still had access to Dean's location because we shared a phone plan that I paid for: Honolulu International Airport, Gate B7. They were probably boarding their red-eye flight home, tan and relaxed, excited to return to their conquered territory. I looked at the bare walls around me. "Goodbye, house," I whispered. "Thank you for sheltering me, but I don't need walls to protect me anymore. I have teeth." Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. I woke up on the sleeping bag, my body stiff but my mind razor sharp. Today was execution day. At 9:00 a.m., the wire transfer hit my new offshore account. My phone chimed, $300,000 credited. It was done. The house wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to Prime Investment Reality, and they had already hired security to protect their asset. I walked through each room one final time. In the kitchen, I could almost see the ghost of my former self, naive and hopeful, setting the table for an anniversary dinner. In the living room, I could see myself discovering the iPad, my world cracking open like an egg. "Thank you," I said to the empty house. "You kept me safe until I was strong enough to save myself." I locked the front door and placed the keys under the mat, exactly as Perry had instructed. A black SUV was waiting, my ride to LAX. I threw my 2 suitcases in the back and climbed in. "International terminal," I told the driver. "Long trip?" he asked. "One way," I said, opening my laptop. "I'm never coming back." As the car merged onto the freeway, I opened my email and began to type the message that would detonate their lives. I had 7 hours before their plane landed. 7 hours to craft the perfect goodbye. I started typing, "Dear family and friends, I am writing to inform you that my marriage to Dean is over." By the time I hit schedule send for 3:45 p.m. Pacific time, I was already at 35,000 feet, flying toward my new life. Below me, California was disappearing into the clouds. Ahead of me, London was waiting. They thought they were coming home to claim their prize. Instead, they were flying home to ruins. And I was free.